Robin Williams really, truly couldn't stand her more than anyone else in his life. Let me tell you about Robin Williams. His full name was Robin McLaren Williams, and he was born on July 21, 1951 in the big city of Chicago, Illinois. His family had money and also lots of imagination and creativity. His dad, Robert Fitzgerald Williams, had a really important job. He was a big boss at the Ford Motor Company, which makes cars. His mom, Lori McLaren, used to work as a model, and she was super funny. Her great sense of humor really rubbed off on her son and helped make him the funny person he became. When Robin was growing up, his family lived in the fancy, rich neighborhoods outside of Detroit. Later on, they moved to Marin County, California, which is near San Francisco. Even though Robin had a pretty nice and comfortable childhood with everything he needed, he wasn't always happy inside. Deep down, he was a boy who felt really lonely and left out. He didn't have many friends, and he spent a lot of time by himself. To make himself feel better and deal with those sad feelings, he discovered that he could make people laugh. He would entertain himself and anyone around him by copying different voices he heard, making up funny characters in his head, and pretending he was in completely different worlds. This special gift of turning his sadness and pain into jokes and laughter would end up becoming the most important part of his job and what people remembered him for. After he was gone, Robin Williams went to a school called Claremont, men's college when he first started college. But then he switched schools and went to the College of Marin instead. That's where he first found out that he absolutely loved acting and being on stage. After that, he was so good that he won a full scholarship, which means he got to go to school for free, to a really fancy and hard-to-get-into school called the Juilliard School in New York City. This is one of the best acting schools in the whole country. At Juilliard, he learned from a super-famous teacher named John Houseman, who taught him so much about acting. While he was there, Robin became really close friends with another student named Christopher Reeve, who would later become famous for playing Superman. Their friendship was really strong and special, and it lasted for their whole lives, all the way until they died. Something really interesting happened at Juilliard. Out of all the students in his class, only 2 people were picked for the school's advanced and extra special program. One of those 2 students was Robin Williams, and the other one was his best friend Christopher Reeve. But even though this was a huge honor and really hard to get into, Robin decided to leave Juilliard in 1976. He left because he wanted to do stand-up comedy full-time, which means telling jokes on stage in front of audiences. He figured out that what he really wanted to do, his true calling in life, wasn't just regular acting in plays or movies. What he really loved was the exciting, fast-paced, and unpredictable world of improvisational performance. That's when you make things up on the spot without a script. His style of comedy was like lightning, super fast, wild, totally unpredictable, and filled with both amazing smartness and beautiful chaos. Nobody else on stage was anything like him. He was completely one of a kind and totally unique, Robin. Williams became super famous and exploded onto the entertainment world in the late 1970s. This happened when he got cast to play a character named Mork, who was an alien from a planet called Ork, in a TV show called Mork and Mindy. The show ran from 1978 to 1982. It all started when he appeared as a guest star on another popular TV show called Happy Days, and people loved him so much that he got his own show. What started as just one episode turned into a huge cultural phenomenon, which means everyone in America was watching and talking about it. His crazy, wild energy, his super-fast wit and humor, and his lovable weirdness made audiences all across America fall in love with him. Viewers had never, ever seen anyone quite like him before on television. He was hilariously funny, making everyone laugh until their stomachs hurt, but he was also deeply human and touching. The show made Robin Williams famous in every household in America, and it earned him his first Emmy nomination, which is a really big award for TV actors. But here's the sad part that people didn't see. Behind all that laughter and all those smiles, Robin was fighting with the darker, harder sides of being famous. He felt a lot of pressure to always be creative and always be funny. He also had early struggles with substance abuse, which means he had problems with drugs and alcohol. This was a really tough battle that he would continue to fight and deal with throughout his entire life. For many, many years, as his career kept growing and changing, Robin Williams showed everyone that he was way more than just a comedian who told jokes. He became one of Hollywood's most versatile actors, which means he could play all different kinds of roles, and he was one of the most respected actors too. His first really big dramatic performance, which means a serious role that wasn't comedy, came in a movie called Good Morning, Vietnam in 1987. In this movie, he played an irreverent radio DJ named Adrian Cronauer who was funny, but also broke the rules. This role showed everyone that he could blend comedy and deep emotion together perfectly and seamlessly. It was so good that he earned an Academy Award nomination, which is one of the most important awards an actor can get. After that amazing performance, he kept giving more unforgettable performances in other movies. In Dead Poets Society in 1989, he inspired audiences everywhere by playing a passionate English teacher named John Keating, who taught his students to seize the day and think for themselves. Then in Awakenings in 1990, he played a compassionate neurologist, which is a doctor who helps people with brain problems. In The Fisher King in 1991, he balanced madness and heartbreak with deep, profound humanity, showing both funny and incredibly sad parts of his character. His portrayal of the beloved genie in Disney's animated movie, Aladdin in 1992, introduced his genius and talent to a whole new generation of kids who hadn't seen his other work. It remains one of the most iconic voice performances in film history. People still talk about it today and think it's one of the best voice acting jobs ever done. Robin Williams also brought so much joy to families through family-friendly movies that kids and parents could watch together, like Mrs. Doubtfire in 1993, Jumanji in 1995, and Hook in 1991. In these movies, his boundless energy, which means unlimited, endless energy, and his emotional depth turned fantasy stories into something that felt real and tangible, like you could almost touch it. But Robin could also equally devastate audiences with his dramatic work, which means he could make people cry and feel really deep emotions. His performance in Good Will Hunting in 1997 was one of these powerful roles. He played Sean Maguire, a wise and compassionate therapist who helps a troubled young genius. This performance earned him an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, which he won. In that role, he delivered one of cinema's most heartfelt and touching lines that people still quote today. He said, "You're not perfect, sport, and let me save you the suspense. This girl you met isn't perfect either. But the question is whether or not you're perfect for each other." That quiet, honest wisdom became symbolic of the man himself. Flawed, which means not perfect, but endlessly compassionate, which means always caring and kind to others. Now let's talk about Robin Williams' romantic life and his relationships with women. His love life was as colorful, complex, and deeply human as the man himself. It was a reflection of his boundless heart, his emotional depth, and his constant search for love, connection, and companionship, which means someone to share his life with. Over the course of his life, the beloved comedian and Oscar-winning actor was married 3 times. Each marriage marked a distinct chapter in his personal journey. Each one was filled with joy, challenges, creative energy, and ultimately lessons in the bittersweet nature of human relationships. Bittersweet means something that has both happy and sad parts mixed together. His first marriage was to a woman named Valerie Velarde. He married her in 1978, right at the very dawn of his fame, which means right when he was just starting to become famous. This was the same time period when Robin's comedic brilliance was taking flight with his breakout role as the lovable alien Mork on Mork and Mindy. Valerie was a talented dancer and artist, and she met Robin during his early years when he was still a struggling comedian in San Francisco, trying to make it big. Their relationship grew out of genuine affection and a shared artistic spirit. This all happened long before fame came knocking at his door. She supported him and stood by his side through the chaos of his early career, watching as his name began to echo across Hollywood and everyone started knowing who he was. However, as Robin's stardom exploded and grew bigger and bigger, and the pressures of being famous got more and more intense, Their marriage began to strain under the weight of all these problems. His schedule was incredibly hectic and busy. He had to go on tours all the time, and there were temptations that came with being a celebrity. Despite their best efforts to make it work and save their marriage, their paths slowly diverged, which means they started going in different directions. The couple welcomed a son named Zachary, who everyone called Zach Williams, in 1983. Robin adored him deeply and loved being a father. He would later say that fatherhood, being a dad, was one of the greatest gifts of his life. Yet by 1988, after a whole decade of marriage, that's 10 years, Robin and Valerie got divorced. Though their union ended and they weren't married anymore, they remained cordial, which means friendly and polite to each other. They were united by their shared love for Zach and their mutual respect for the years they had spent building a family together. Just a year later, in 1989, Robin found love again. This time it was with a woman named Marcia Garces, and she had already played an important role in his life before they fell in love. Marcia had been Zachary's nanny, which means she took care of his son, and later she became Robin's personal assistant, helping him with his daily life. Over time, a deep friendship between them blossomed and grew into romance. Their relationship surprised some people because of its unconventional beginning. Most people don't marry their child's nanny. But for Robin, it was a partnership rooted in understanding, compassion, and creative collaboration. The two shared not only a marriage but also a working relationship. Marcia became a film producer, which means she helped make movies, and she worked alongside Robin on several of his projects, including movies like Patch Adams and Mrs. Doubtfire. Together, Robin and Marcia had 2 children. They had a daughter named Zelda Ray Williams, who was born in 1989. She was named after the beloved video game character from The Legend of Zelda. Then they had a son named Cody Allen Williams, who was born in 1991. Robin often spoke about his immense love for his children. He drew inspiration and humor from fatherhood itself, and being a dad became a recurring theme, which means it kept coming up again and again, in both his comedy routines and his personal reflections when he talked about his life. However, fame once again cast a long shadow over his happiness. The demands of his career, combined with his ongoing struggles with addiction and depression, placed enormous strain on the marriage. After more than 20 years together, more than 2 decades filled with both triumph and turmoil, which means both really good times and really hard times, Robin and Marcia separated in 2008 and finalized their divorce in 2010. The end of their marriage was a really difficult period for Robin. He publicly expressed regret for the ways in which his personal demons, his inner struggles, had affected those he loved most. Still, he and Marcia maintained a degree of mutual respect. They decided to prioritize the well-being of their children above all else, which means they put their kids' happiness first. In 2011, Robin took a final leap of faith in love when he married Susan Schneider. She was a graphic designer and artist. The two met at an Apple store in Marin County, California. It was a surprisingly down-to-earth and normal setting for a man of Robin's fame. Most people wouldn't expect a famous actor to meet someone at a regular store. Susan later recalled and remembered that she was immediately drawn to his warmth and gentle humor, not his celebrity status, or the fact that he was famous. Their relationship grew into a deep and loving partnership, providing Robin with comfort and companionship during the later years of his life. Susan became a pillar of support, which means she was like a strong column holding him up, as Robin faced mounting health challenges. These included heart surgery in 2009, and later the devastating neurological symptoms of what was eventually diagnosed as Lewy body dementia. This is a complex and little understood brain disorder that affects how your brain works. Despite his illness and not feeling well, Robin and Susan shared moments of laughter, tenderness, and quiet domestic happiness at their home in Tiburon, California. They remained married until Robin's tragic death in August 2014, a loss that shook the world and made millions of people incredibly sad. After his death, Susan became an advocate for awareness of the disease that took his life, working to help other people understand this illness. Now here's where the story gets interesting. For decades, Robin Williams and Sally Field were two of Hollywood's most beloved and respected actors. Both of them were capable of making audiences laugh one moment and cry the next. They could do both comedy and drama really well. They shared the screen together in the 1993 blockbuster Mrs. Doubtfire, a film that became a family classic that everyone loved. The movie showcased their incredible chemistry as a divorced couple trying to navigate life after separation, figuring out how to live apart but still raise their kids. To the outside world and to all the fans, it appeared as though the two stars got along perfectly. Their banter was sharp and funny, their timing was impeccable, which means their comedy was perfectly timed, and their connection seemed genuine both on-screen and off-screen. However, behind the scenes, things were reportedly not as harmonious as fans might have believed. There were moments of tension, creative clashes where they disagreed about how to do things, and personality differences that made their working relationship far more complicated than their warm smiles suggested when cameras were around. According to people close to the production who worked on the movie, Robin Williams could be unpredictable on set. His genius for improvisation, making things up as he went, often led him to go off script and not follow what was written. He would add lines and do antics, which means funny actions, that sometimes left his co-stars struggling to keep up and not knowing what to do. Sally Field, on the other hand, was known for her professionalism and discipline. She valued precision, structure, and preparation. She liked everything to be planned and organized. This contrast in styles created friction between them. While Robin thrived in chaos and loved it when things were messy and unpredictable, Sally preferred control and liked things to be orderly. Robin once joked about this, saying Sally didn't find me funny all the time. He was half smiling when he said it, but there was a hint of truth beneath his humor. You could tell he meant it a little bit. He continued, "She had that look, that Mom looked like she wanted to ground me, which means punish him like a parent would punish a child." The two had fundamentally different approaches to their craft, which means they did their acting jobs in completely different ways. Although they respected each other as actors and admired each other's talent, they sometimes clashed in personality and just didn't get along that well as people. Robin's improvisations, all his making things up, often resulted in countless retakes, which means they had to film the same scene over and over again. This frustrated both the crew, all the people working on the movie, and his co-stars. Sally, coming from a background of drama and method acting, where you prepared deeply for your role, sometimes found his comedic spontaneity exhausting. It wore her out. Robin once remarked with a self-deprecating laugh, which means laughing at himself, "I think she thought I was just a big kid running around with too much sugar." He was basically saying she thought he acted like a hyper child. She'd give me that stare, the kind that could stop your heart. And I knew I'd better stick to the script, which means follow what was written and not make things up. Behind the laughter, though, there was real strain and tension between them. Field, known for her intense emotional depth and ability to feel things deeply, sometimes viewed Robin's constant joking as a defense mechanism. She thought it was a way of hiding his insecurities and pain, like a shield to protect himself. Meanwhile, Robin reportedly found Sally's seriousness intimidating, which means it scared him a little or made him nervous. He admired her talent and thought she was a great actress, but her perfectionism, always wanting everything to be perfect, sometimes made him feel judged or constrained, like he couldn't be himself. Even after the cameras stopped rolling and they finished filming the movie, Robin occasionally hinted at their off-screen tension in interviews. He would mention it, though always through humor because that's how he dealt with things. He once said, "Working with Sally was like being in therapy with a referee. You want to laugh, but you also don't want to get yelled at." Those who knew Robin really well understood that humor was his armor, his protection. If he didn't like someone or felt uncomfortable around them, he'd cover it up with a joke. He'd hide his real feelings behind laughter. In truth, the relationship between Robin Williams and Sally Field was a blend of admiration and frustration mixed together. They were two strong, brilliant performers who simply operated on very different emotional frequencies, like they were on different wavelengths. Still, saying Robin hated Sally might have been too strong a word. What he likely felt was a mix of respect and irritation, an emotional push and pull that stemmed from their differences in energy and temperament, which means their different personalities and ways of being. Sally Field, for her part, later spoke warmly of Robin after his death in 2014. She said nice things about him and showed that she cared. She said, "He was more than the genius we saw on screen. He was the most delicate, vulnerable soul," which means he was sensitive and easily hurt on the inside. Those words revealed that despite their differences and the tension between them, she recognized the pain behind his humor. She understood the deep humanity that made him so unique and special. Yet for Robin, those years working alongside her remained challenging and difficult. He once admitted privately, not in public, "Sally could cut through you with one look. She didn't buy the clown act. That's what made her great, but also what made her hard to be around." What he meant was that Sally could see through his funny act and see his real feelings underneath. To someone like Williams, whose entire being was built around making people laugh and feel joy, being around someone who saw straight through the act could be really uncomfortable. She forced him to confront parts of himself, to face parts of his personality, that he often tried to bury beneath his comedy and hide under his jokes. In the end, Robin Williams and Sally Field represented two sides of Hollywood's golden heart. Robin was the manic spark of improvisation, the wild, creative, spontaneous side. Sally was the disciplined fire of craft, the controlled, prepared, professional side. They may not have been close friends off screen, and their relationship may have been fraught with moments of misunderstanding, which means filled with times when they didn't understand each other. But together they created one of the most touching and enduring on-screen partnerships of the 1990s, a movie duo that people still love and remember today. Behind the laughter and all the funny scenes, the tension between them may have actually fueled the authenticity that made Mrs. Doubtfire unforgettable. Maybe their real-life friction made the movie feel more real. And while Robin might have joked that he truly hated her more than anyone, those who knew him best understood something important. They understood that his words, like his comedy, always carried layers. There were always deeper meanings. His jokes were a blend of humor, truth, and affection, all wrapped up inside the soul of a man who felt everything deeply and intensely, tragically and sadly, behind his laughter and all the joy he brought to others. Williams struggled with depression, which is a mental illness that makes you feel very sad, anxiety, which is when you feel very worried and scared, and later the effects of undiagnosed Lewy body dementia. This is a progressive neurological disease, which means it gets worse over time and affects your brain. It affects thinking, memory, and mood, basically how you think, remember things, and feel. On August 11, 2014, the world was shocked by the devastating news of his death. He was only 63 years old. It was a loss that felt deeply personal to millions of fans who had grown up watching his movies, listening to his stand-up comedy, and watching his heartfelt interviews where he talked honestly about life. Tributes poured in from around the globe, from all over the world. Fellow comedians, other actors, and everyday regular people all shared stories about how Robin Williams had made them feel less alone. His comedy and his humanity had touched so many lives. Even NASA, the space agency, honored him in a special way. They tweeted on social media, "We will miss you, Robin Williams. We watched your movies. Now you're in our galaxy," like he had become a star in space. It was a beautiful way to say goodbye to a man who had given so much laughter, so much heart, and so much of himself to the world, even when he was hurting inside.